The following is a Barrett Sports Media production. Every sports media star has a story. From the highs...
We are number one. We just grabbed every key demographic.
To the lows.
You're fired!
The path to success is always different. To help you learn more about the industry's top broadcasters, Barrett Sports Media brings you the Sports Talkers Podcast. Now, here's your host, Stephen Strom.
Welcome. Great to have you in Sports Talkers Podcast. Stephen Strom here. Thank you for making me a part of your morning, afternoon, night. Today's guest, we got Ryan Leaf, former number 2 overall pick in the NFL draft back in 1998 when I was born. Hopefully that doesn't make him feel incredibly old. But he's now making a name for himself in the sports media landscape. He recently announced the start of his own sports talk show, The Straight Line with Ryan Leaf. I desperately wanted to kind of get into the mind of Ryan as far as when he started to think, let's get into media. We know he has this anonymous bust as an NFL player, but I love that he's been able to turn his life around here and use some of his experiences to a positive. He talks about a lot in this. He's extremely vulnerable and honest and genuine, and we always appreciate that. That's not the easiest thing to do. So he talked a little bit about his upbringing in Montana, Washington State, the influences that have really helped him in Joel Klatt and Kirk Herbstreit. I'm looking forward to you guys hearing it. And without further ado, here is Ryan Leaf. All right, so let's first start here. You grew up in Montana. I guess give us a sense of your knowledge of sports radio / media growing up in Great Falls.
Well, I mean, you know, we go to church on Sunday mornings, and church was from like 11 to noon, and games kicked off at 11 Mountain Time. So I always missed the first half of the first slate of games, but we ran home as soon as possible. And I don't necessarily remember the announcers. I do remember Sunday Night Football announcers.
And who were they at the time? Do you remember?
I think one of them was Patrick and Theismann, I think is what they were. And then of course in the college football Saturdays, like Keith Jackson's voice is college football to me. And ironically enough, I ended up going to Washington State, which is where he went to school. And I majored in broadcast journalism and communications, and kind of, he was kind of the guiding force in all of that. The Murrow School of Communications is pretty impressive there at Washington State. So that's where it kind of all started. For me, it was all about the sport. It wasn't necessarily about the commentating aspect of things. And sure enough, that's kind of where it led me to play the game. So
you did have some interest, though. That was sort of, you went there for school. That was sort of, quote unquote, the backup plan.
Well, yeah. When I went to college, I didn't think I was going to play professional football. I'm just this kid from Montana, so I just wanted to go play college football and get a degree for free. And I found out they had such a great communication school, and I started kind of following that route. And before I knew it, though, I'm playing well. Yep. We're winning, and now I'm being considered an NFL prospect. So that ultimately got put on hold, and I left a year early, so I didn't even get a chance to actually finish my degree there at the time. And I just assumed I'd play 15, 20 years in the NFL and call it a day. But yeah, there was many nights, doing the cable news show there and at the university, doing the radio show, things like that. So I kind of cut my teeth on that part. I certainly wasn't as articulate at all. I look back at interviews I did when I was a player, and I can't believe
you cringe.
I cringe. Yeah, I cringe. My
We all do. I'll listen to stuff I'm probably going to listen to this in a couple of years and be like, oh my God, what do you wrap it up? Finish the question. All right. So what was the moment where you were, at what age and where were you, where you thought, okay, I want to get into sports broadcasting, whether that's radio, being an analyst, show? When did that moment happen and why?
Well, when I got out of prison, I had to decide on what I was going to do with my life.
Sure.
And for me, there was 3 real options. When I was in college, I used to make the highlight videos or help make the highlight videos for our team. So I did a lot of sound editing and things like that. And I liked putting music to, movies or those films. And so when I got out, I looked into what was that exactly? What was it to be somebody who does and puts the sound and music to film and TV? Because I thought that stuff is incredibly impactful. So I applied to a college. It was down in Phoenix. I got accepted in there. And then I also was looking into law school because I had spent time in the criminal justice system. And as a nonviolent drug offender, I spent almost 3 years in prison. And I wanted to, that's not where, nonviolent drug offenders belong. They belong in treatment and where they can help. And so I started looking into what law school would look like. I started studying for the LSAT. So that was the second thing. The third thing was I loved what Kirk Herbstreit got to do for a living. I watched him on College Game Day on Saturdays, call football games. And so I thought that would be the best job in the whole world, to be around the sport I love and, be in that world. So what I did is, I attacked all three things. I applied to the college for the sound editing and for TV and movies. I started taking the LSATs and started applying to law schools. And I reached out to Kirk Herbstreit and Joel Klatt. And I pretty much told them that I would do anything they needed. I fetched their coffee for a year or whatever, just to learn the ropes. And it's so kind to let me follow and tag along. And I did exactly that. I shadowed them for about a year to see whether I wanted to do the job and if I could be any good at it. And I answered yes to both of them. And I tell you right now, if the offer hadn't come to do my own radio show at the time, I don't know if I would have followed in that footsteps. If it would have been one of the other two options that I'd put in motion came first, maybe that's where I'm at right now. I think they were all three passion projects. And this one kind of took off. Fox gave me a real opportunity, the Pac-12 network, and then ultimately ESPN. And it's just continued. Rich Eisen's been a huge support. He's a monster, great in the world of sportscasting and sports broadcasting. And he's really opened the door for me by allowing me to guest host the show when he is out. And that really allowed, I think, for my current bosses at PointsBet to, manufacture and build a show for me based around what I wanted to do and build something together. And that's all because of the work I did. Now, the first job I took in broadcasting was an unpaid 2-hour show on Saturday afternoons with Gal Media out of Houston. And it was just a, kind of a sports talk show. Yep. With the local.
You started like all of us, Ryan. Yeah. I love this.
Yeah, that's where I started, and it's, and every opportunity I got, I've just taken a lot of advice. And luckily for me, I've been supported a ton over the last 6 years that has gotten me to this point.
Why do you think the Joel Klatts, the Rich Eisens, why do you think they believed in you in that moment?
I can't tell you why. Maybe it's kind of how I carry myself now. There's a humility to it because of, how I had fallen. I talked to him about how it wasn't about me, and this is something I'd really love to do. I mean, I still can't tell you why they did it. I just can't. But I'm incredibly grateful to them all. It's not lost on me that, I get some pretty amazing opportunities where some others don't. And so I don't take that for granted. Like if I'm allowed to do something in the broadcast space, like I'll work harder than anybody. And I don't think that was necessarily the case my whole life. Things kind of came easy to me, and not to say that the broadcasting side doesn't come easy, but I work really hard at it too. Yep. And then I have to think back to how hard I had to work to become a great football player. I think I took it for granted, and I just don't do that anymore. I don't allow that to be the case because I know all the people that really supported me and stood up for me. Those people included all of them kind of put their arm around me when they didn't need to, and just said, "Sure, Ryan, I'd love to help if I can."
What maybe things that you thought surprised you early on that you may have thought was easier said than done in the broadcasting space?
When you're on the radio, you're not thinking about anything else except what you're trying to get across. And once that camera pops up and the lights are on you, like, when you're doing your open before a broadcast, I mean, it was crazy. I remember the first few times trying to figure out, what to do with my hands. I felt like Ricky Bobby, and I just, and then the bright lights of it, like literally the bright lights sometimes just stun you for a minute, and you how can my brain not be thinking about the thing I was just thinking about
that adrenaline
10 seconds ago? And so, yeah, it's taken some time, but what I've, and the Rich Eisen show is really helpful for this. It's a simulcasted radio show. So they videotape it. It's a TV show, but I just started figuring out that I'm in a room. I got a couple, kind of co-hosts there. We're just having conversations. There's a camera that's on me. I'm aware of the camera.
Yep.
But it's not, I don't care. I don't care how I look on it. I don't, I'm just going to do what I know what to do here. And that was just a learning experience and figuring it out.
I'm always curious about the relationship between the players and the media. It's usually tricky. And I'm always curious to know, like, if players respect a journalist or a personality that didn't play. Like, I know the relationship between the past players and current ones, like I'm just thinking Randy Moss, Justin Jefferson, they'll respect each other. Is there anyone out there in the current media, like a Stephen A. Smith, a Colin Cowherd, that you, as a former football player, really respect their knowledge of football?
I've come to respect everybody who works in that field because I know how hard they work to be informed. Like I didn't think about that before. As a player, I thought, I'm so much better than you. Why do I have to put up with your nonsense? You don't know what the hell's going on out there. And so any interaction now with anybody that works in the broadcasting side of it, on the football side, I understand how hard they work to be where they're at. And I can tell when guys are phoning it in, and I'm pretty quick to figure it out. And I'll be like, you did not do any research here. You didn't do any work. If you did, you wouldn't have asked those types of questions and things like that. So, I respect everybody that does it. And when they show up to work, because I know how much time they've put into it. So, and I respect them regardless of whether they played it down, like Diana Rossini is amazing. Mina Kimes does a tremendous job. Katie Nolan, those are individuals that never played football, yet they're very knowledgeable and they spend a lot of time, and you can tell they work their tails off to make sure they're informed and do a good job. And in fact, I'd argue they work harder than anybody out there because of it. And so therefore you got to respect the heck out of them.
So when you're doing your radio show, and I'll start using some names here. Let's say Josh Gordon, Johnny Manziel, situations of their personal life, come up. Where does your experience and your perspective come into now, relaying a message over the radio? What goes through your mind when you hear those stories?
Well, if I can relate, which is in those instances, I can relate pretty closely. It's probably pretty important that I speak on it, and because I've been through it. Right, there isn't many that have gone through what myself and Johnny Manziel or Jamarcus Russell or Josh Gordon have gone through. Right, you're not going to be able to find many people that have that life experience. So if I have a platform where the discussion is being had, of course, I probably am maybe the most knowledgeable in that moment. So I'll hold people accountable. But I will say this: I won't ask anybody to do anything that I haven't done. Right, I've taken accountability for the things I've done and continue to do and everything like that. And there's consequences to that. So I think that I don't have a problem with that. I'm not hypercritical. Like, I don't look for hot takes or things like that. I just try to tell it like it is.
Yeah.
And use my experience. And I think that makes me uniquely qualified with my ability to host a show by myself for 3 hours, as well as be a former player with a ton of experience, good and bad, from the collegiate level to the NFL level. So I think that makes me a bit of a unicorn, and I that's how my agent puts it. Let's put it that way. I like it how he tries to sell me as that.
Your relationship with Peyton Manning, number one, where's that at? Would you accept an invitation to the Manning cast if he ever offered? Let's do that.
Well, Peyton and I have known each other since we were 20 years old. So 26 years we've now known each other through all the ups and downs. His family, my family, have stayed incredibly close.
Wow.
He invited me to his induction into the Hall of Fame last year. This little bobblehead's the gift that we were given at his Hall of Fame party afterwards. It's pretty funny.
Must be a big bobblehead.
It's got a big forehead on it, of course. But yeah, he wrote me while I was in prison.
Wow.
His mom and dad, when I was going through my struggles, were so kind to my parents. They always have been. Eli and Brady, my youngest brother, are about the same age. Cooper, somebody I really look up to and admire too. The adversity he overcame, of course, and to have two Super Bowl winning Hall of Fame younger brothers. And so the family's amazing. We stay in touch. I text him from time to time. Of course, would love to be a guest on the Manning Cast.
What do you like about the Manning Cast?
If he ever would like, unfortunately, I haven't had much chance to watch it. Monday nights, he'd probably be a good show to watch, but I think I have more of a hard time. I like to sync up the Monday night broadcast with the Westwood One radio broadcast with Kevin Harlan.
Kurt man. Warner.
And I love Kurt. He's another person that's been really helpful to me, particularly around the radio aspect of things. I'm finally getting to call some NFL games on Westwood One. I think I'll call one in a week from now, the Thursday night game between the Saints and the Cardinals.
Awesome.
So he's been really helpful with that. So I like to do that. Sometimes it's hard to sync it up because, everything that streams and stuff like that. But I love hearing his take on things while I'm watching the game. So I have a hard time, flipping over to the Manning Cast aspect of things.
Shout out Ryan Leaf, man. That was a really fun spot, informative, super honest. So we appreciate Ryan for jumping on with us. Thank you guys. As always, please rate, subscribe, and review BarrettSportsMedia.com, my podcast. We got other podcasts on the site, articles. We got you covered with everything you need to know about media, sports media. We got you covered. I will talk to you next Thursday here on the Sports Talkers podcast. Have a great weekend. Headed to the Vikings-Dolphins game. Looking to get to 5-1. I'm fired up for it. We'll see you and talk to you next Thursday.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Talkers podcast with Stephen Strom. A reminder that each episode can be found on iTunes, Spotify, and most podcasting platforms. To stay up to date on future episodes, visit BarrettSportsMedia.com.